In this video, we're going to talk about being authentic. What does it mean to be authentic, and how can you be authentic? How can you be an authentic expression of God, an authentic expression of the Tao, of the way? So, I've been thinking about this lately. You hear people say all the time, just be yourself, right? Be yourself. Just be yourself. Be authentic. Be yourself. What does that mean? So, I've been thinking about this lately. And my opinion is there is a difference between being authentic and being yourself. And I'll give you some examples here. So, first of all, what is being yourself? I mean, let's say somebody tells you be yourself, or let's say you tell somebody else, just be yourself. What is yourself? What does that mean? Be yourself. Well, that's going to take you through some serious existential questions here, like what is self? What is the nature of self? Now, if you go enough into that question and you inquire enough about the self, who am I, right? If you take, for instance, Ramana Maharshi's inquiry, who am I? Who is the self? Who is the self? At the end of it, you can simplify this in a few words, actually, or one word even, or just a sentence, and say, I am love. I am beauty. I am awareness. I am compassionate, understanding, loving awareness. I am wisdom. I am truth. They're all the same thing. You can just pick one word of those. Love. Somebody asks you, who are you? Love. Right? Love. Kindness. That's the true nature of self. Right? And actually, this is just a word we're using in this plane because these words are used here because the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. So these are just words, are just like pointing, like fingers pointing at the moon. So when you really go deep into it, you're God. And God just is. God is love. God is beauty. God is wisdom. God is truth. So when you are being yourself, you are being loving. You see? Now, authentic is different. Being authentic is just being whatever the creative expression of God is. So let me give you an example. Me and Miranda, we go for walks. This is the street we live on, and so we go for walks, right? And when we're walking, especially on that side of the road, dogs are constantly barking at us. There is like a dog code here in this town. Where if they see a human, they bark at a human. It's just the way it is. Okay, almost every dog, with maybe just a few exceptions. All the dogs here bark. They bark. Now, look, if these dogs were being who they really are, themselves, they wouldn't bark because every living being is at the deepest level loving awareness. So loving awareness wouldn't bark at itself because it's all one consciousness. Because why would it? Because it's loving. Why would it? Because the barking is like an aggressive act. It's not an act of love. So if the dogs were being their true self, the deepest self, right, the eternal self, the unchanging self, they wouldn't be barking at us because they're loving awareness. Why would you bark at someone aggressively and tell them to, essentially the dogs are telling you to fuck off. So if we were, for example, to go and go on that territory, the dog would like bite at us. Would be like grab me and bite me or something, right? So the barking is not exactly a loving act per se. However, it is an authentic act. It is an authentic act within creation. It is because the dog in that moment is barking. That's authentic. The dog, because that's what the dog thinks is the right thing to do. That's what the dog is programmed to do. That's what the dog thinks is the right thing to do. The dog thinks that, when I see human beings, I'm going to bark at them. That's authentic. That's an authentic expression. Okay, see, that's the difference between being yourself and being authentic. So another example is, if you are angry, for example, if you're angry and you're talking to someone and you're sort of being rude to them in one way or another, you're being rude. Let's say you're being rude to someone, okay? Now, that rudeness is not the true self, because true self, if you're in that place of love, in that place of peace, you cannot possibly be rude to someone else. How could you? If you're love, if you're peace, if you're joy, it's not possible. Because you're on that channel. Like it's like if you're listening to classical music on a radio station, you cannot listen to rock music. It's just impossible because this channel is specific for classical music. So don't go on a radio and go on a classical music and expect to hear any rock music. In the same way, when you're on the God radio station, on the peace radio station, on the love radio station, on the harmony radio station, you're not going to be rude to someone else. You're not going to be like standing in line at the shop and getting angry at the cashier because the cashier is maybe taking her time or something. You can't be rude. It's just not going to happen when you're on that God frequency, when you're on that God radio station. It's not going to happen. So that's true self. See, that's the truest self, the eternal, the unchanging, the loving awareness. But if you happen to be angry and you say something rude to the cashier, that is an authentic expression of what is the authentic expression of creation, because you're God having an experience, let's say, as a human in creation, and you're authentically angry because that's just who you are in that moment. That's just what your programming is. You're angry for whatever reason. You had a bad day. So that anger is an authentic rudeness to the cashier. But it's not who you truly are. But it remains an authentic act. It remains an authentic, it's an authentic state of being. You're authentically angry and you're authentically rude to the cashier because you had a bad day, because you don't like your job, because you got to go back to all your personal history to see what led you to this point where you're rude, right? You had some traumas, etc., that in that moment, that rudeness, it's not justified, but it's authentic. You see, because everything just is. And so if it's expressing itself in that way, it's authentic. Now, you know what would have been an inauthentic thing to do in that moment? Is to so if you're rude to the cashier, okay, an authentic, here's actually what would have been an authentic thing to do, is to pretend like, try to hide your anger, for instance, towards the cashier for whatever reason. Or let's say somebody wronged you. Let's say a family member wronged you, right? And you really want to tell them like, hey, this was rude, this was this or that. And you hide your frustration with that family member. You just hide it. You hide your what you wanted to tell them for whatever reason. You could say, oh, but I'm trying to be myself here. I want to be more loving, so I'm just gonna suppress my anger towards my the family member that hurt me or said something rude to me or whatever. That's inauthentic, because it has to happen from a true place, from when you're truly in peace, in love, in harmony. But if you're suppressing something, that's inauthentic. You might as well be angry. You might as well express your anger, express your frustration, express your thoughts, because that's authentic at least. And then you can sort of work it out after and work on yourself to get to a point where you're truly, genuinely in that loving awareness, God, let's call it God radio station, where you're truly, genuinely not frustrated, not angry when your mom tells you this or when your dad tells you that, or when that cashier is taking her time. So in my books, it's always better to be authentic. It's always better to be angry when you're angry. It's always better to be sad when you're sad. It's always better to be happy when you're happy. Energetic when you're energetic. Tired when you're tired. Because at least there's no suppression going on. There's no fakeness. Okay, at least there's honesty there of what the authentic expression of God in that moment is. So I salute the dogs for barking. Okay, because if the dogs were to, animals are just instinctual, so they don't really suppress. With us humans, we suppress things. And work on yourself, work on your issues, work on the traumas, work on clearing up the energy fields until you're genuinely in a place where you're not going to be rude to that cashier in that situation, in that moment. You see? So being authentic, being yourself, two different things. I know maybe this is semantics and it's just a philosophical just philosophical words and just it's philosophy here. But a lot of philosophy is bullshit, right? It's just fun. It's just like masturbation. It's fun. It's you're playing with words here. But again, I just see a difference there. I see a distinct difference here. And sometimes, so being yourself can be authentic also. Because if you are on the God frequency and you're not acting, you're kind to that cashier and not rude, let's say. And if your kindness is coming from you being aligned with the God frequency, that's authentic. Then you're authentically being yourself in that moment. You see? And then other times, if you're rude to the cashier, you're authentically expressing what is. You're authentically expressing the creation, but you're not necessarily being yourself, your deepest self at least. There's different layers to the self, right? I'm talking about the deepest layer here. The deepest layer is just loving awareness. So if you're gonna be loving, be authentically loving. Don't be fakely loving. Don't try to fake it in that moment and try to act, in a fake kind way. And then when you leave the place, you're still holding resentment towards the cashier or towards your dad or your mom or your sister. You see? If you're gonna be loving, if you're gonna be yourself, be authentically yourself. Work on yourself until you get to the point where you're authentically loving awareness. Otherwise, don't waste your time and other people's time, and be honest and be authentic. If you're angry at someone, let them know you're angry at them. If you're happy with someone, let them know you're happy with them. If you're sad, let that person know that you're sad because they said this and that, etc. Be authentic at all times. The authenticity also shows you where you are and where you're not. So let's say you're rude to that cashier. All right, cool. So you let it out. Then maybe you go home and you actually do some reflections on why you were angry. And you're like, oh, I was angry at that cashier because I remember when I was a child or when I was working a cashier job, whatever, right? Let's say you just like kind of figure out, you do the reflections, and then you figure out, this is why I was rude to that cashier. It's because other people were rude to me when I was working as a cashier. And now I'm just acting because I got frustrated with customers. Now I became the customer that's rude at that other cashier. When in fact, I should be actually more considerate because I was a cashier and, I didn't like it when customers were rude with me. For example, I'm just giving you an example here, right? But if you do reflections on it, you were being authentically, genuinely rude in that moment. And then you reflect on it, you're like, oh, okay. Now it's like you understood. You understood why you were rude. So the next time, you'll be genuinely kind and you may even apologize to the cashier. Why? Because you acted authentically, not inauthentically, not fakeness. You showed your frustration, you showed your rudeness. It's not your deepest self. It's not what love would do. It's not what Jesus would do, right? There's that saying, what would Jesus do? However, it's showed you where you're not. It made you go home and reflect so that the next time you'll be authentically kinder because you figured out why you were rude. You've put yourself in the shoes of the cashier and you're like, oh, like it doesn't feel good, to have a customer being rude to you. So that's just some jumbo mumbo philosophical bullshit, I guess. But it's nice to play with words. It's nice to just kind of see, because doing these reflections, who you are. True self is just love. It's just love. But be authentic at all times. Be authentic at all times. Don't fake it. Don't hide it. Just be authentic. Be authentic. And that will lead you to being loving in an authentic way at some point, if you're a reflective person. All right. So 14 minutes of blah, 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 blah. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I love you guys. I love every single one of you. I would like to thank the Patreons for their support and all the people who make the one-time donations on PayPal. I have the links in the description if you're interested to support this channel. I'll see you guys in the next video.